Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Chicago, Grand Rapids, Duluth, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, and Jacksonville, Florida. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. The drug war. So Alex Caracastas tweets this out. Good catch. There's an article in the New York Times about big drug bust. A fake trip and a stunning betrayal landed top cartel leaders in U.S. hands. Okay? So I'll cut to the chase. He says, nothing to see here. Just two throwaway lines in the New York Times article about one of the biggest drug arrests in years that yet again shows that no one thinks the drug enforcement is about reducing drug use or violence. The war on drugs is a total fraud. And so what does he show you here? Falco Ernst, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group. By the way, Falco Ernst sounds like someone Tom Cruise has to disguise himself as in his next Mission Impossible film, right? So Falco Ernst, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, said it was unlikely that the arrests would have a major impact on smuggling of fentanyl or other drugs from Mexico, since the cartel was deeply decentralized organization already. We aren't talking about a structure that depends on a few kingpins. It's very diffuse and resilient to these kinds of hits. Mr. Ernst said, if anything, he said, the move could spark more violence. So our prosecution of the drug war doesn't stop drugs, but it does create more violence. So basically, it's like all our other wars for the last 80 years. It doesn't help anything, and it just makes more violence. So here is that's the headline from the New York Times. The arrests in the United States of two top leaders of a Sinaloa drug, is that how you say it? Sinaloa drug cartel came after what initial accounts suggest was a dramatic betrayal that saw one of the men, a son of the notorious drug lord known as El Chapo, lure the other under false pretenses onto a plane that delivered them both into the hands of the American law enforcement. Really? It's got to be awkward for everybody when the cartels realize they're just dealing with another cartel, but with jet fighters. One of the operatives taken into custody, Ismael Zambada Garcia, was arguably the most powerful criminal in Mexico. A septuagenarian kingpin who helped to found the Sinaloa cartel with El Chapo decades ago and remained at large even after his partner was extradited to the United States and convicted at a trial in New York City. The other was one of El Chapo's own sons, Joaquin Guzman Lopez, who, with his brothers, had inherited a large swath of their father's illicit business, moving massive amounts of cocaine and fentanyl into the United States, Europe, and elsewhere. The two men were arrested at a small local airport outside of El Paso, Texas. We were just there, lovely show. And on Thursday afternoon, after their Beechcraft King airplane landed there on a flight from Mexico, Mr. Guzman Lopez had persuaded Mr. Zambada Garcia to join him on the flight by saying they were going to look at real estate, officials said, but the plane instead headed north across the border. The arrests were hailed by officials in Washington as a major victory for U.S. law enforcement, a major victory that's not going to stop the flow of drugs and just create more violence. So it's a major victory for law enforcement, which has accused Mr. Guzman's sons, known collectively as the Chapitos, for being among the world's leading smugglers of fentanyl. Fentanyl is the deadliest drug threat our country, and this isn't going to do anything to stop it. The Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable. Okay. Falco Ernst, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, said it was unlikely that the arrests would have a major impact on the smuggling of fentanyl or other drugs from Mexico. So he says the arrests, what he's saying is the arrests are meaningless. And he means it. The arrests are meaningless. The Justice Department will not rest until every single cartel leader, member, and associate responsible for poisoning our communities is held accountable. And since that will literally never happen, we will enjoy eternal job security prosecuting a bullshit drug war that is a complete failure. If anything, he said, the move could spark more violence as factions vie for control amid a vacuum of power at the very top. There's already a bunch of pressure on that structure, and there has been a lot of infighting. So we're definitely facing a scenario of greater violence potentially. After the news of Mr. Zambata Garcia's arrest, Mexicans on social media began circulating an interview with the drug lord published by Proceso magazine in 2010. In it, Mr. Zambata Garcia mused about what would happen if he ever turned himself in to the authorities. My case should be exemplary, a lesson for everyone, he said. But after a few days, we learned nothing has changed. Referring to cartel bosses, he said, locked up, dead, or extradited, their replacements are already out there. So he said this 14 years ago, nothing is going to change. You can lock up the heads of all the cartels. Nothing's ever going to change. You're never going to stop the drugs. Wow. Also, because the main smuggler of these drugs is the CIA. And this is working as intended. After 40 years, the drug war has cost more than $1 trillion. Caused over 50 million people to be caged, almost all of them poor, including over 20 million for marijuana. It's caused an estimated hundreds of millions of police stops that meet legal definition of kidnapping. The drug war has caused tens of millions of years in prison, separated tens of millions of children from their parents, cost tens of millions of people their education, houses, and ability to make a living. It has caused millions of square acres of pristine land to be sprayed with poisoned. So the drug war has caused tens of millions of people their right to vote. It's killed hundreds of thousands in militarized drug war and U.S.-led murders in Latin America, led to the militarization and widespread surveillance by local police and federal agents of every U.S. city. The drug war has deprived hundreds of millions of people low-cost, sustainable treatments for a wide range of illnesses, cost millions of people billions of dollars in wealth from police civil forfeiture seizures of their property, and has led to mass spread of infectious disease. This is what the drug war has done. The vast majority of these horrific consequences were inflicted on people for personal use of certain substances and exercise of bodily autonomy that other countries have protected, and that this country protects and allows profit for harmful substances like alcohol and tobacco. All of this was done in ways that dramatically increased the racial disparities in every facet of life. And almost all of it targeted the poorest people in our society. Students at boarding schools and Ivy League universities used drugs without fear. Laws weren't meant for those people. The war on drugs is a war on you. That's what this is. It's a war on you that you probably didn't have any idea was even being waged against you. It is. Imagine what this country would look like if the government actually cared about its people. We'll never know. We'll never find that out. Government bureaucrats know all of these statistics, and yet the war on drugs continues in every city and every town every single day. Why would sophisticated people pursue strategies that are so counterproductive and destructive to their stated goals? Well, the only reasonable conclusion is that the war on drugs is not about flourishing communities and ending drug use. It's about profit. It's about racism, surveillance, and social control. Seen this way, the system is actually quite efficient and effective. I'll leave you with this quote from Nixon's top advisors explaining their decision to launch the war on drugs, because that's when the war on drugs started. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Incredible to see these lines in a story about some of the biggest drug arrests of all time. So that's a huge drug arrest. And guess what? It's only going to make things worse. I lived the biggest drug crime of in the world. We all lived through. And it was for the profit of Big Pharma. And I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so the drug war officially complete fraud. But a lot of money to be made prosecuting it. I believe having a substantial percentage of my financial future secured with gold and silver. You know this. That's why I decided to partner with our sponsor, Colonial Metals Group. They helped me set up a safe and secured self-directed IRA where I have access to my assets no matter what the stock market or, for that matter, what the government's doing. Let the team of experts at Colonial Metals Group help you protect your family's future. We put together a special offer for our audience. Click on the link in the description below or call a special 800 number and you'll receive a safe and up to 10 grand in silver. So the number over at Colonial Metals is 888-910-1419. That's 888-910-1419. Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Chicago, Grand Rapids, Duluth, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, and Jacksonville, Florida. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.